Story 1. My mother told my father no 3 times. On the third time, he got drunk at a local bar and started pouring his heart out to anyone who would listen. It was a very small village in the Italian Alps. My father barely spoke Italian, and no one in the village spoke English, including my mother. Word got back to my mother about this sad American at the bar, so she went to find him and told him she would marry him. My parents celebrated their 44th anniversary last month. Story 2. I have a story about this. My friend, Person A, had been with his girlfriend, Person B, for years. He decided he wanted to propose. What he did not know was that Person B was also planning to propose to him. Person A proposed first. Person B panicked because she had already planned her own proposal and bought a ring, so she said no. Over the next week, Person B became increasingly upset and refused to answer Person A's calls and messages. Person A used his savings to buy a plane ticket to Europe. What was supposed to be a 3-month trip through Western Europe turned into a year-long trip around the world. One day, Person A said that he was coming back. Person B decided to wait for him at the airport and propose there. Turned out that while in Peru, Person A met a woman. They fell in love almost immediately and married there. 5 years later, Person A and his Peruvian wife are still happily married and recently had a baby. Person B has not forgiven herself for how she ruined her relationship with Person A. Story 3. My mom actually said no to my dad's proposal when they were younger. Not because they were not in love, but because she was not sure whether marriage was something she wanted or whether it was something society expected. They stayed together and had children, which is why you are reading this now. A few years ago, when my dad was terminally ill, my mom plucked up the courage and asked him. At first he said no as a joke to get her back after all those years, but a few days later he accepted. He died a happy man. I uploaded this before bed and had not been on Reddit since. I just checked and saw your lovely responses. It means the world to hear that people are taking some joy from our story. Thank you. For more context, there were actually 2 declined proposals, not just one. Both happened before they had children, so I suppose I am lucky. Also, when they did marry, it was not purely for estate reasons. They already had wills and so on in order. It was one of those last great days as a family. My sister and I were the only 2 present at the registry office. They squeezed us into one of the registrar's rooms because there was a long waiting list for weddings and we did not know how long he had. He died 3 months later, so we were extremely grateful to the staff for helping us. Story 4. As a woman who was engaged and had the engagement later called off, it still stings a little even after 11 years. When you are sure you are with the love of your life, losing them can really tear a hole in your life plans. Story 5. We met in her home country of Germany while I was traveling. I knew I was in love. We dated long distance for a while, flying between Europe and the United States. I suggested marriage so we could be together. She said no a few times. I did not press. I was patient and not pushy because I knew she was worth the wait. Then she realized that marrying would allow us to live in the same country and overcome the difficulties of being born in different places. A few years later, I am still married to my best friend and living with her in Germany. Not every no stays a no. Life goes on. Story 6. I never saw her again. Less than a year later, I met my wife. We have been together 15 years. Story 7. We lived together for another 6 years until she changed her mind and told me I should ask again. We were engaged for over a year and married in 1991. We are still married, have 3 children, and are both very much in love. Story 8. My dad proposed to a woman who said no. She refused because he was a violent alcoholic and insisted he get clean. Took him some time, but he did. He then met my mother through a matchmaker, and they have been married for 25 years. If that woman had not said no, he might never have gotten clean. That low point led him to my mother, who makes him happier than ever. My dad still talks to that woman sometimes. She later married someone else. They had a son who died from a medical condition. Story 9. She had cancer. I suggested we marry because I had full medical coverage through my employer. She declined, and over time we grew apart. We have not spoken in 15 years, and I do not know if she is still alive. Story 10. This actor Patrick Moot proposed to his girlfriend at a basketball game and was turned down on the giant jumbotron. The clip was posted on YouTube and went viral. She later told him she declined because she thought his penis was too small. He then traveled around the world documenting what other cultures think about penis size and enlargement, and made a movie about it called Unhung Hero. I have never watched it, but the title alone makes me laugh. Story 11. This is the story of my parents. My father asked my mother to marry him several times, and she refused each time. One day he asked again and she said yes. He panicked, left her apartment, and broke up with her. 3 weeks later, he could not bear life without her and begged her to take him back and marry him. They married 9 months later and were together for 16 years until my mother died of cancer. They loved and deeply appreciated each other. That was 25 years ago. My father has not remarried. No one will ever come close to my mother. Story 12. I dated a woman for over 2 years and proposed. The first time she said, I don't know. A couple of months later, I asked again and she said maybe. I was pretty upset, but then I found out she had been sleeping with several of my friends, so I dodged a bullet. Story 13. We received a letter from the immigration office saying she was missing some documents. At the time, we were both stressed with work and study, and neither of us was sufficiently fluent in German to understand the letter. We went to the university office for international students. The woman in charge translated the letter poorly, telling us that even if we presented the documents, they would proceed with the deportation process. We panicked. Looking for help, we ended up in City Hall. In a rush of adrenaline, I asked the information officer if getting married would stop the deportation. I do not remember if he answered. Then I suddenly shouted that I wanted to marry her and asked her to marry me. She started laughing, and I started laughing. The officer handed us the phone to the relevant department and asked us to call. Outside City Hall, we could not stop laughing. She thanked me but said to wait a bit. After the weekend, we went to the immigration office, where staff explained which documents were missing and how to obtain them. Her visa was not denied, and we continued to live as planned. It was intense and, in retrospect, really funny. Addendum. We are not married and never plan to be, but we live together. She found a job that provides her with a visa. Soon she will take the citizenship exam. Story 14. My parents were not married but wanted a child and had me. My father, who was Catholic and Hispanic, decided he wanted to marry my mother and proposed. She refused because she had not been divorced from her first husband for long and now had 3 young children, so she preferred to remain unmarried. He threatened to leave, got on his motorcycle and started to drive away. My mother chased him down and gave in, leading to what my parents call the voodoo wedding that same day. Story 15. I was a young Marine. I was only home on weekends. I was dating a girl from my hometown for about a year. When I asked, she said yes. Her father, a former Navy sailor, kept saying we should wait. We put it off a bit longer. Fast forward another year. She dumped me. Her father informed me she had slept with a lot of people. More than 50 over the 2 years we dated, and he was very happy I had not married her, and he apologized to me for her behavior. She then totally ghosted everyone, including her family, for about 6 months. I found out she had moved 7 hours away and was living under a house, not in a basement, with her new boyfriend. She called her mother to come get her. Her mother and father asked me to go get her and bring her home. Good times. Good times. Story 16. I asked her right out of high school, but she was not ready. We stayed together and went to college at the same school. We spent the first year in separate dorms, then moved in together. We got married a few years later. Our 20th anniversary is coming up. Story 17. In 2017, Google introduced a feature that let you make photo books from your Google Photos account. My girlfriend and I had been dating for almost 2 years, and I knew she was the one I wanted to marry. So I created a photo book of all our selfies and ended it with a page made from a photo I generated that said, "Will you marry me?" I then put everything into an album and built the photo book. I did not realize that the album I used was a shared album and that the other person receives a notification when new photos are added. The other person the album was shared with was my girlfriend. That evening at dinner, everything came out. She saw the photo and she was not ready. There were good, smart reasons related to timing, family, and finances. We were not breaking up. We were just not getting engaged at that time. A year later, we had fully discussed marriage, went ring shopping. She picked her own ring, and by the time I proposed, we both knew her answer. We celebrated our first wedding anniversary in April. It seems to have worked out so far, and the photo book is on a shelf to my left. Story 18. My mother told my father no when he proposed, even though they were already living together. She thought he was impotent, and it was not until she became pregnant that she said yes. In retrospect, I wish my parents had decided early in their relationship that they could barely stand each other. Story 19. I spoke to her about it beforehand, and she seemed really keen on the idea. I decided to propose about a week later in front of all our friends. She was so shocked she picked me up off my knee and shooed me away. Most of our friends were confused because everyone knew it was going to happen, and she said she was excited. I did not know what to do. It was really embarrassing. Later she explained she did not mean no. She just did not know what to say and was scared. She said yes after apologizing profusely, and this year we celebrated our 9th anniversary. I am happy that this comment blew up, but I feel like the next time I use it as an icebreaker, someone will say they read it on Reddit. Story 20. This is not my story, but a friend's. They both had difficult homes and became a couple at 14. Around age 20 he proposed. She said she was not ready to commit. He proposed every year after that, partly hoping she would change her mind and partly as a ritual to show he was still serious. She declined each time. In their late 20s, he finished his studies. She was approaching the finish line and told him she was ready for marriage and eventually children. He then had second thoughts about marrying the only woman he'd ever been with and worried he might be making a mistake. They took a break. She went from Europe to the United States to pursue a Doctor of Philosophy at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. They drifted further apart. She moved on and entered a long-term relationship with a partner who was much better for her. He quickly regretted ending the relationship and slept with whoever he could find on Tinder, unable to form a meaningful relationship afterward. Story 21. My mom rejected my father the first 2 times, laughing out loud. There were no hard feelings between them. I guess my mother was just not ready for marriage yet. She ended up proposing to him. My grandmother and mother sewed a suit for their dog to wear and attached a sign around his neck with a ring that read, "Will you marry me?" Then she sent the dog into the kitchen to beg for scraps while my father was preparing dinner. The next thing she heard was a very concerned voice shouting, "Honey, the dog is asking me to marry him." Everyone started laughing hysterically. My dad and my mom are still married 2 decades later. The fact that I even had to clarify this is disappointing. Update 1. My parents found the photo. They are sending it, so stay tuned and I will post the photo. Update 2. You all are more impatient than children at an ice cream truck. Here is the photo. Update 3. You are ruthless. Give the old good boy a break. Update 4. I find it humorous that my photo has more views than this thread has upvotes. Hello to all of the lurkers out there. I hope you have a wonderful morning, day, evening, or night. I swear I am not trying to be passive-aggressive. I just realized that it could come across that way. Story 22. We had been dating for a year and a half, and I was due to move out on orders because I was in the army. She suggested we get married, and I said no way. I was going off to school for 6 months, then a year on a deployment to the Middle East. It just would not work. She was calm and said, "You think I will be a burden through all of that, but I will actually be a help." Seconds earlier, all I could think about was what a big pain it would be to get married and leave. Now, for some reason, it seemed perfectly reasonable that she was right. We got married a week later at the courthouse. I was 22. Last month, we had a nice socially distant dinner to celebrate our 29th anniversary with our 2 amazing children and a few friends. Story 23. My mother turned my father down but did not end the relationship. She was not sure about marriage, as she valued her independence and was nervous about commitment. There were no hard feelings. He called the next day after she had more time to think about it, and she agreed. They celebrated 32 years of marriage last month. Story 24. She had said she was not really a fan of marriage, so I thought proposing not to marry might be well received because I wanted us to be together for the rest of our lives. I asked her not to marry me. She said no. We have been married for 10 years. Story 25. She said yes on the second proposal and now we are divorced. Reddit is a strange place. All the carefully thought out posts and comments get no recognition, and then a random offhand remark becomes my most liked comment. I'm glad you all enjoyed it. For those wondering, I have been single for a year. I spent last night with a smart, beautiful woman and had a blast. Life is good. Second edit. Thanks, moderators. My life is now complete, and I can die knowing I made a difference. Story 26. We got married and moved in together. 2 weeks later she moved out, blocked me everywhere, and never gave me a reason. Shortly after, I was served with papers and I am now divorced. That was last summer and I am not sure where I am now, so I am making work my main priority. I just want to know why for closure, but that seems too late now. Story 27. My dad kept trying and was eventually successful when he stopped using onion rings. Story 28. She said yes. I had a special occasion planned, an observation wheel, and I proposed at the very top. We were on our way to a family event, and I had a ring made. A few days later she said no. Everything fell apart. I was distraught. We continued dating for a while, but it was long distance. She was on the other side of the world. When I visited, it was awkward. Eventually her dad kicked me out. I was flying standby and was stuck in an airport for 4 days. Took me years to recover. I am now happily married and glad it never worked out. I was not in a good place when I met her, and her family was controlling. It would never have worked. The woman I married is very supportive and my best friend. Turned out better than I expected. Story 29. We had been dating for a little over a year, and I was so sure she was the one. I drove 2 hours to see her at college, and during a beautiful winter night walk I proposed. She looked me in the eyes and said, "Oh, you thought this was serious? I don't know how to say this other than that I have been seeing other people. Actually, I have been seeing other women." I was stunned. I put the ring in my pocket, walked to my car, and drove away without looking back, crying the whole time. I haven't seen or spoken to her in 7 years, even though she has tried countless times to reach out. Now it's a story I tell friends who are nervous about proposing, to remind them that even if the answer is no, it could be worse. Story 30. About 2 years later, I met my wife. We have been happily married for 22 years. The woman who said no got married for the first time last year and seems happy. My wife cares for me in ways my former girlfriend never did, and I am much happier with her than I ever was with the woman who said no. She is not a bad person. I was young and in love with someone who did not love me. It worked out for the best, and I am glad she said no. Story 31. Not sure if this counts, but I proposed. She said yes, and 1 month before the wedding she took it back. This is what happened immediately in my life. I personally lost about $3,000 in deposits. My parents and her parents each lost about $4,000 in deposits. My parents and I are working class, so it took years to recover financially. I spent $2,200 on a ring I did not want. This is my biggest regret. I tell anyone who listens. The chain store I bought it from would not take it back. Pawn shops only offered a few $100s. Jewelers often price the complete ring, stone, band, and setting, so if you are going to buy a ring, just buy the stone. You can get a better deal on a band and setting from a local jeweler. Apparently the gem I bought was low quality. Most of the cost of the ring was nonsense. Most of my family was from out of state, and many people were upset because they had booked flights. I had to go to the emergency room. I stayed in my room and avoided calls because everyone was angry and I did not want to hear it. I was depressed and stayed in bed until one day my roommate took me to the emergency room, and the doctor treated me for severe dehydration and an infection. When I got over it, I became stronger. I did not propose to anyone until a decade later. Honestly, there was no one I loved deeply enough to be in a committed relationship. When I did propose in my 30s, our relationship was more mature than the first time. We have been married 13 years. She is my best friend. When I have good news, she is the first person I want to tell. When I have bad news, she is the first person I want to tell. I recovered financially as well. I learned my lesson about the engagement ring. I only paid $300 for the next one. She loved it and treasures it. After our 10-year milestone, we were doing so well that I told her to pick a wedding ring of any cost. She refused. She still wears that inexpensive $300 ring and loves it. Story 32. He didn't ask again, and I had to ask him instead. We married last year. Story 33. I was proposed to several times by men when I was living in the Middle East. I think they simply moved on to the next American woman. Story 34. Not me, but a guy I knew proposed to his then-girlfriend in a restaurant and made sure a friend recorded it. She walked out when he popped the question and basically ghosted him. He started drinking, developed a new passion for gambling, and lost all his savings. He ended up living on state assistance, now works as a garbage collector, and almost set his house on fire at least 4 times that I know of by making food and falling asleep drunk. He was an interesting guy, friendly to some, but the state he was in is just sad. I hope at some point he picks up his life again. I have not heard from him in years, so I have no idea where he is now. Story 35. She said yes, but then no. We met online and really hit it off. She was amazing. We knew each other for only a month before she moved in with me, and it was magical. I proposed just after a year together. She had a genetic disorder called familial dilated cardiomyopathy. It was severe. You could see her heart pushing out between her ribs. She did not want to get married because we would not be able to afford her checkups and medication. She was often weak but still full of life. She napped frequently, and one day she did not wake up. I cried for days and was heartbroken for a couple of years. I still think of her often and visit her grave whenever I go home. It is now 1,000 miles away. I know I filled the end of her life with happiness, as she often told me, but I still feel guilty sometimes. Story 36. I was the person who said no. We had only known each other for 3 months. He was smitten. I was more cautious. I told him I liked him, but it was way too soon. When he asked how long would be enough, I said maybe a year. He proposed again at midnight 1 year after we first met. I said yes, and we have been together 8 years now. I know a year was still not long, but we had a long engagement and did not get married for another 2.5 years. Story 37. My buddy proposed. She said, ugh, okay. Well, I do not want to be the kind of girl who says no. They are divorced. Story 38. I started reading this thread expecting to feel sad, but instead I felt joyful after reading so many wholesome stories. Story 39. She was traumatized by a past relationship. At the time, I wanted to help her move on, and in doing so I realized I had fallen in love with her, because despite being depressed, she helped me overcome my social anxiety. I could not bear to see her suffer. I proposed to her and she rejected me because she was not ready for another relationship. After I confessed my feelings, she became more anxious and our friendship ended temporarily. We had no contact for months. Later, I contacted her, we talked, and I learned she had been shutting herself in her room and minimizing contact with people. I still had romantic feelings, but I wanted to be with her and help her heal, so I asked to be friends again. We spent time together and she became my only friend. When I saw that she was returning to her normal life, I proposed again and she accepted. It was a long road to that day and I have never been happier. It has been 4 years since then. We still have arguments because of different views, but we always find solutions. I can say with certainty that no one loves me the way she does. I feel lucky to have her in my life. Story 40. My parents had been dating for a few months when my mom proposed to my dad. He said no, not until he got a proper job and could provide. A month later, he had secured a job. They celebrated 32 years of marriage last month. Story 41. It was very bad for a while, then gradually improved to neutral. Things continued to improve as I learned to be happy and focused on myself. I eventually found someone else, and things have been getting better for 20 years. Story 42. I was the one who said no. We were high school sweethearts. We had actually known each other since first grade, and despite my moving to a different city, we reconnected in high school. I followed him to college and realized there was a whole other world out there besides the small towns I grew up in. He already had our entire life planned out. After we had dated 3.5 years, he surprised me with a ring and a proposal, and I realized he was not what I wanted. He was lazy, never went to class, did not stand up for himself, and was codependent. He then proceeded to stalk me. We lived in the same apartment complex but in different units. He would knock on my door at all hours. I never answered. He would call and text constantly. This was before you could block numbers on an iPhone. He attempted to break into my roommate's apartment through an unlocked window. I was not there, and he told her he was just trying to get some items. The very rare times I opened the door shortly after our breakup, he would force his way in or stick his boot between the door so I could not close it. I called the police numerous times, but they never did anything. He would follow me when I left places. At one point, he somehow knew information he could not have known. I discovered he had installed a program on my computer to record my passwords, keystrokes, and activity. That was when I decided to change my phone number. He would leave letters, gifts, and other items on our balcony. He did not stop and often threatened that he would find my new phone number. Eventually, the harassment decreased, but to this day, I still hear from him. I am married now almost 4 years, and I have heard that he is also married and expecting a child. A few months ago, he found my extremely obscure Facebook. It is not even my full name, just half my first name and my middle name. I have maybe 11 friends on there who have no connection with him. I really only use this Facebook to be in groups that discuss true crime. He asked me to meet him for lunch for closure. I blocked him, but I know I will hear from him again in a few months. It is ridiculous. I regret ever dating him. Story 43. Very first girlfriend ever. I started dating her at 17. After 6 years of dating, I proposed. She said, "No, I'm sorry." I asked why. She said she had been thinking about it for a while but had not told me. She said she had found someone else. Then she broke up with me right then and there. I asked if she had cheated and she said no. We're just friends right now. But he makes me happy when I'm with him and you just don't. You used to, but not anymore. I tried sabotaging their relationship when I found him begging her for explicit photos, told her ultra-Christian parents that he was twice her age, and did everything I could to be the insane one. I finally realized what I was doing, apologized, and promised never to contact her or her family again. I sold the ring and used the money to buy a guitar and a boatload of weed and spiraled out of control for 3 years. I flunked all my classes, got a dead-end job at a construction gig, and slowly descended into borderline alcoholism. I could not leave the house or go to work or do my job without being high. I gained a lot of weight and let myself go. I finally contemplated suicide and planned it out with a 20-page instruction manual on how to make it painless, not screw it up, and not hurt anyone in the process. I never went through with it because I kept getting scared and spending my suicide fund on weed and alcohol. I finally broke down and told my parents all of this and asked for help. I spent another year in a rehab program with a therapist. I got out and have been clean for 3 years as of this September, but I still wake up at 3 a.m. feeling sick every couple of months for the way I treated her after spending 6 years telling her that I loved her. But that is all over now, and all I can do is learn from it, promise to be better, and keep going. I am turning 29 in a week, still living at home with my parents, and constantly battling self-loathing and anxiety while working a job for $9 $25 per hour. I pay my parents $300 per month to stay with them, and I am going back to school. I am taking the minimum number of credit hours per semester since I am paying out of pocket and I work full-time and overtime when I can, but I slowly raised my grade point average from 1.28 to 2.64 and can start getting help next semester instead of paying for all of it out of pocket. I also lost a lot of weight during the pandemic and weigh 189 pounds now. In rehab, I dropped to 220 pounds, but I was closer to 245 to 250 pounds before that. Safe to say I will not be worth dating for a long time, But maybe when I get my degree and finish growing and learning, I can get a self-sustaining job, move out, and truly start over. Edit. I am getting a lot of private messages asking what the number one thing was that helped me through that time. Without a doubt, punk rock and going to punk concerts helped. A song by my all-time favorite band, The Flatliners, was my wake-up song, and Best Bud's song Girlfriend helped me realize that if I wanted to try to make my own music, it can be short and punchy as long as it is from the heart. Story 44. I dated my wife in high school. I was all wrong for her at the time, and it was moving way too fast, so we broke up on good terms. One of the last times we talked, I asked her if she would marry me one day. She laughed it off and said no way, and that I was definitely not the marrying type. Fast forward to college. I was working full-time and she was a law student, and she walked into the liquor store where I was the manager. We talked for an hour, and it continued in the parking lot, just catching up. At the end of the conversation, as she was leaving, I jokingly asked her to marry me again. She laughed and said, "We'll see. We have been married 16 years as of October." Story 45. It was absolutely horrible at first. I legitimately thought my life was ending when, shortly after, she wanted to take a break. She wanted to date a coworker at Baker Square and had a really strange, cult-like relationship with her colleagues. At first I was confused and upset. Weirdly, one of her friends, who became an acquaintance of mine, contacted me because she knew I was in a rough patch. We hung out. She knew I wanted to get back together with my former fiancé eventually, so nothing happened immediately. Eventually, my former fiancé found out the coworker she was dating was a jerk and wanted to get back together with me. I had been fretting for 3 months, so I said yes, even though I had started forming a bond with that friend. Slowly things deteriorated as I became suspicious she was seeing another coworker. And I was right. She ended up breaking up with me again. I thought I would go through it all again, but this time the shock lasted only a few days because I had closure. Meanwhile, the friend who became my girlfriend, who I have been with for 4 years, somehow knew this would happen and was there for me when I needed it. Both breakups were rough. I could not function. We got together, and now I cannot understand how I thought I was happy with my former fiancé. Looking back, her family was messed up. Her mother was extremely controlling and even bragged about dating a boy in high school and breaking up with him so badly that he moved for mental health reasons. I guess the apple did not fall far from the tree. To be honest, I miss her father a lot. He messages me every once in a while. I doubt his daughter knows, and I can hear in his voice that he would have preferred her to date me rather than her new boyfriend, since I had a good bond with him. Even so, I avoid messaging too much because I would somehow feel like it was cheating on my current girlfriend, whose parents are the most relaxed I have ever met and very easygoing. I honestly think my life would have been terrible if I had married my former fiancé and had to deal with that mother-in-law situation. Anyway, that is my story. Thanks for reading. Story 46. We were living together. I proposed. She said no. I love you, but I need to think about it. I don't think I'm ready yet. Can you give me some time and ask later? A few months went by and I asked again. She gave the same answer. After a few more months and a couple of weeks, she asked what I thought about us getting married. I replied, "That's an excellent idea. Why didn't I think of that? Our 39th anniversary is next month." Story 47. I proposed to a woman after almost 6 years together. She said no and added that maybe it was time for us to go our separate ways. I was shocked, but life had to go on. About a year later, I met someone else and we were engaged within a year. We were both ready for marriage. That was 16 years ago. We have 3 terrific children. 2 boys who are exceptional athletes and a girl who is a bright little nerd. The woman who refused me eventually married, had a couple of children, and then divorced. She married again, had another child, and divorced again. We completely lost touch several years ago. Story 48. I asked again 7 times. She finally said yes on the condition that I would feed her. She was pregnant and hungry. Story 49. My story is a little different. She said that she was not ready yet and asked me to wait and be patient with her. It helped that I knew she had some issues with commitment and change, so I played the long game and waited for her to make a decision. It took 3 years and the birth of our daughter for her to come up to me one day and say that she was interested in getting married. One more child and 21 years later, we are still happily married. Story 50. My mother told my girlfriend not to marry me for her own sake. We have been married 48 years, are retired, and are doing well. Story 51. My first major girlfriend was stunning, a model, and I was besotted with her. She started slipping away, and I thought it would be a great idea to propose so she would be with me forever. Thankfully, she was too smart for my desperation and turned me down flat, telling me up front that she was too young to settle down and wanted to have fun. Losing her was more traumatic than being rejected, and I struggled with despair, but I channeled my energy into my career, which took off. A few years later, I found my true love, and she proposed to me. 26 years later, we are still happy. As for my ex, I bore her no ill will and can only thank her for being wise enough to know we were never destined to be together. Story 52. I proposed to my then-girlfriend in Central Park, New York City, in 2013. We were with her sister and her sister's fiancé, who were in on my plan to surprise her. Deciding who would carry the ring box, her sister's fiancé taking random photos of squirrels to justify carrying his nice camera, and otherwise being very supportive. When we reached the little bridge where we usually took pictures, we posed, and I used the classic "oh shit, I have to tie my shoes" move to get down on one knee. I pulled out the ring box and popped the question. She had no clue how to react and uttered a soft no. What the fuck? Ultimately, she was just speechless and stunned that I had managed to pull the wool over her eyes all day. The no was more of a "no way you pulled this off" reaction. We are now married nearly 5 years and have twin daughters. Story 53. Chung fun is my favorite dim sum dish. It is shrimp wrapped in rice noodle and served with a sweet dipping sauce. Dim sum is generally inexpensive, and there are many dumpling options to choose from. Story 54. Laughing out loud, I asked my wife. She knew it was coming. I got down on one knee. She said no. I blanched. She said, "Just kidding, I swear. We have been married 22 years as of last April. Every once in a while, just for fun, I bring it up and she always apologizes." Story 55. Let me give you all some advice from someone who's been indirectly part of many proposals. I own a gem, mostly diamond, manufacturing corporation and a high-end retail subsidiary. I have been helping people on online forums for a few years. The question of whether you two are getting married is not the surprise. You should discuss marriage and life building with your significant other in detail, your timelines, big picture goals, career aspirations, children, where you want to live or move, ideal family dynamics, and so on. What can be a surprise is the actual proposal itself, the how, where, when, who will be present, and the small nuances. Are you going to do it while hiking Everest to symbolize a long journey together? Or will you just pop the question in bed because you are relaxed? Even for the proposal, get general insight. Does your partner want you to propose in front of a 40-person family at a reunion or Thanksgiving? Or would they rather do it in private? As for the engagement ring, please try to have your significant other be part of the engagement ring design process. They are the ones who will, hopefully, wear it for life. Make sure it is what they want. I generally recommend going ring shopping together. That way there is no guesswork, even for a small detail like ring finger size. If you want to learn about diamond values, look into these topics. Natural white diamonds and gem-grade diamonds in general. Natural fancy colored diamonds, lab-grown diamonds and their certifications, and the diamond industry, including supply chain, ethics, and mining statistics. A lot of shoddiness and price gouging occurs at the retail level, which is the point in the supply chain that affects end consumers the most. Story 56. Depression and 10 suicide attempts. We both really liked each other until I saw a lot of text messages from a stranger asking when she wanted to meet up. The next day I proposed and she said no. She had already found someone else. She walked away, and I have never been the same. Story 57. Not quite what you asked, but my girlfriend, 5 or 6 years ago, screamed at me during an argument. "I'll never marry you." I responded, "You don't hear me asking." We got married this past January. Story 58. It was not me, but my teacher proposed to another teacher in front of all their colleagues, and she said no. On that day, his classes were silent. He just sat at the front of the room doing nothing. Everyone in the school knew. Story 59. I was the person who said no. We had a big fight, so I went into the kitchen to clean and clear my mind. He eventually came into the kitchen and then proposed. We were young and I was really surprised. For anyone proposing, do not use a proposal to try to patch things up. Story 60. I had just graduated from high school. I was 19 years old and serving in the United States Air Force. We had been dating since our sophomore year of high school, roughly 3 years. I asked and she respectfully said no. She explained she thought we were too young and not ready, even after more than 3 years together. We continued to see each other for about another year. Things were never bad and we did not fight until that January. She came over on Friday evening of the Martin Luther King Jr. weekend and we broke up. She stayed the rest of the weekend and went home on Monday afternoon. We wished each other well and went our separate ways. We have not spoken since. I did not keep in touch. I still wish her the best. I met my wife in October of that same year, and this month we celebrate 28 years of marriage. Our children are adults, well-adjusted, and college graduates. I think my life has turned out quite splendidly. Story 61. I am someone who said no. I dated a man for 6 years, 4 of them long distance while we were at university. We both graduated, and I had come home to do a master's degree at a university close to my home city. He had graduated in law, and in Scotland you need to work for a year as a trainee lawyer while preparing for exams after your degree to qualify as a lawyer. I found out he had been cheating for at least a year with a girl we knew from high school. She had been waiting for him to come clean, so I told him no. He did not get a trainee post. I finished my master's degree but did not particularly like it and changed careers more than once because of the financial crash. We are both married to other people now and do not cross paths, except one day when I was at a pub with my husband and my in-laws and the woman he had been cheating with was our server. Story 62. It had been 5 years. Things had gotten a bit rocky. We both worked the same incredibly time-demanding job, and it had kept us apart despite living together for the better part of 2 years. The promise of a 6-figure salary made it hard to let go, and I proposed in a last-ditch effort to save the relationship. I will never forget that moment. She looked at me, roses on the floor, ring in hand, and with cold eyes filled with sadness and a little pity she said no. She left for a coworker I had hired a year before, a man 20 years older than either of us, and I was shattered. Up until then, society, family, and friends had reinforced that I was living life the way it should be lived. Financial security, wealth beyond my needs, a long-term relationship. We were even getting a house. In an instant, all that came crashing down. What followed was the single most devastating time of my life. I couldn't work. They were there. I tried but was pulled off the job by another supervisor and sent to the hospital to be checked. They put me on stress leave. Within a month I had stopped eating, stopped sleeping, and stopped doing anything. I didn't answer the phone. I spent my days lying on the couch with streaming television on. Eventually some friends who hadn't seen or heard from me in some time came to check on me. I must have been in rough shape. Half the house was destroyed. My hands were a bleeding mess from smashing things. There were still bits of particle board stuck in my knuckles. They took me to the hospital. Intake upgraded me to critical care, which was full, so I had to stay the night in a secure waiting room. The next day, a doctor met with me, asked questions, and said, "In the 13 years I've worked here, you are the most suicidal person I've ever met. I'm honestly surprised you're alive." I will never forget that. I had never thought of myself as a suicidal person before. I couldn't help but think dying would be easier than living through what I was feeling. They placed me in a psychiatric ward for 3 months with no outside privileges and a rotating set of medications to try to change my mood. I had no contact with the outside world, and I wanted it that way. I shut down social media and turned off the phone. I did not want the friends and family who had been proud of me to see what I had become, a miserable, hollow shadow of my former self. The only person I called was her, and I asked her to come get me. She never came. It's hard to say what happened next. Eventually, the friends who had taken me to the hospital were allowed to visit from time to time. I don't remember moving out of my house or what happened to my belongings. I don't remember being 28 years old. I have a picture of a birthday somewhere, but no recollection of it. I spent the next year on many prescription drugs that destroyed my memory. One day I woke in a strange house and walked to a dining room where there were no fewer than 7 Bibles on the table. It scared me. I had no idea where I was. Keys to a truck sat on the table in my bedroom next to what appeared to be my computer. A woman stopped by. She was a nursing student, beautiful, talented, and caring. She was there to see me, and to my surprise we were dating or had been for a time. That felt strange. I had known her before all of this, but never in that context, and the relationship felt unnatural. As the medication wore off, I began to be more present. Apparently the friend who brought me to the hospital was there when I was discharged and took me with him to his church. I had no place to live, and they set me up with one of their members and paid 2 months' rent for me to stay there. I had never been religious in my adult life, and this was unfamiliar, but at least I was not homeless. I woke up one day with a new life and had to accept that was the case. Like a video game, I started over. I later helped the same friend through his divorce and to buy a house that we both lived in. The woman and I parted amicably a few months later. I started volunteering and went back to school. I officially resigned from the railroad. Some of the people I left behind when I cut ties with that relationship I still have not spoken to since that day. Now, 6 years later, I am attempting to create podcasts that give people a safe space to talk about their struggles and reduce the stigma surrounding them. I am launching a Facebook group and a YouTube channel aimed at helping people achieve holistic wellness and self-discovery. That is the whole story, and probably the first time I have shared it. Edit. This got more attention than I expected. I will attempt to answer the many questions below. Thank you for your support, the awards, and most importantly, for listening. Sometimes it is strange to think you have gone through something so unbelievable. Story 63. After about a year, I proposed to a beautiful woman who had a 4-year-old daughter. Her brother and I were firefighters together, and he set me up. She quickly said yes. I then asked her daughter if I could be her stepfather, and she said yes. I should have realized something was off when she wanted to wait and tell her family. We waited for 2 months, and then she broke it off. Her brother knew about the proposal and could not figure it out either. It turned out she was secretly seeing another man. Her family and her daughter were upset with her. I saw the daughter about 6 years later with her uncle, and she said that her mother had made a big mistake leaving me. She wished I had been her stepfather. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.